In this video, I want to answer the question, what is the Cynefin Framework? The Cynefin Framework is a model for the different kinds of problems that we can face. And as a result, it is a way to assess the appropriate approach that we should take to problem solving and decision making. The Cynefin Framework was developed by Dave Snowden, and a great place to learn more about it is from his 2007 Harvard Business Review article, A Leader's Framework for Decision Making, which he co-wrote with Mary Boone, and I'll put a link in the description. The Cynefin Framework divides the situations we're going to find into a number of domains. The first two of them are predictable or ordered domains. The next two are unpredictable, and there's a fifth, disordered domain. The simple domain. In the simple domain, we see obvious cause and effect relationships, and you don't need to be an expert to understand what's going on. You can observe and see what's going on and make your decisions accordingly. It's easy to understand the patterns that are going on, and events are highly predictable. What happens tends to be based on simple interactions, and as a result, fixing problems is susceptible to simple, repeatable processes. This means that in the simple domain, we can develop repeatable best practices that we know are going to have the results that we want. Snowden says that the steps to resolve problems are firstly to sense what's going on, secondly to categorize what we observe, and thirdly to respond with best practice solutions. The complicated domain. In the complicated domain, there are strong cause and effect relationships, but they can be much harder to spot because of the number of interactions that are going on at one time. Predictions are harder to make, and so you're going to need experts who are able to properly analyze what's going on, understand it, and therefore make predictions for you. Complicated systems typically are made up of many simple components, and it's the number of those components and the scale of the system itself that makes them complicated and hard to predict. It's the sheer number of interactions going on. As a result, there is rarely a single right answer. There may be a number of solutions, all of which have validity, and therefore it's inappropriate to publish some form of best practice, but there will be good practices that we can apply, particularly in the process of understanding the situation. And there will be good practices we can apply to stabilize the situation and remediate it. Snowden suggests that the steps for resolving a complicated problem are to sense, to analyze what's going on, and to respond with good practice. The complex domain. In the complex domain, cause and effect relationships are weak at best, which makes complex interactions difficult to predict, and they're not susceptible to expertise in the same way. This is because experience and prior knowledge are not a good guide to the future. The complexity of the system means that what appears to be the same thing happening now does not mean that it will play out in the same way as we move forward into the future. As a result, sometimes intuition can be more useful than analysis. Patterns tend to be emergent, by which I mean you can understand them with the benefit of hindsight, but you can rarely understand what's going on as the patterns are playing out. With complex systems, the process of reductionism, breaking the system down into its individual components, simply does not work as it does in complicated systems. As a result, problem solving and effective decision making with complex problems requires a multidisciplinary team that are able to bounce ideas off one another, to listen to each other's experiences and understandings, and synthesize a solution. So for resolving complex problems, Snowden suggests that we need to first probe and then sense and then respond with a situational response based on a shared understanding and interpretation of what's going on. The chaotic domain. In the chaotic domain, any patterns that exist are barely glimpsed. They're hardly discernible at all, and where there are patterns, they tend to be overlaid with a measure of randomness or even non-linear interactions, which make the patterns almost impossible to unscramble. As a result, finding solutions is going to be very difficult. Your first priority, therefore, is to stabilize the situation. And then, when it comes to finding solutions, you're going to apply creativity and innovative thinking to find novel solutions to these chaotic problems. As a result, Dave Snowden suggests that the resolution process needs to start with testing, then sensing, and then resolve with a creative, novel solution. Snowden also puts a lot of emphasis on understanding the nature of the boundaries between these four domains. For most of the boundaries, the boundary between the simple and the complicated, between the complicated and the complex, and between the complex and chaotic, these boundaries are continuous. A simple problem morphs into a complicated problem as you get more and more interacting parts, and a complicated problem can morph into a complex problem as those interactions get more and more subtle and sophisticated. And as we start to overlay non-linearity and randomness into the situation, a complex problem can morph into a chaotic problem. However, the boundary between simple and chaotic problems is very different. In his Harvard Business Review article, this was represented as a cliff edge. And the key thing here is complacency. It's very easy to become complacent about the simplicity or apparent simplicity of a system and then fall over the cliff edge into chaos without even realizing it. Disordered domain. The final domain Snowden illustrates in the center of the diagram, and he calls this disorder. These are problems that lack clarity, and as a result, it's difficult to tell what domain you are in. Now, the danger that Snowden suggests here is our natural presumption that the domain we are in is the one we best understand. We default to treating a disordered problem as if it's a problem that we're most familiar with. So, if most of your work experiences are all about following straightforward processes to get predictable results, you are most likely to assume that the problem you have sits in the simple domain. However, if you're used to applying analysis to every problem and drawing in expert judgment, then you're likely to interpret the problem as coming from the complicated domain. If you've had most of your successes through forming consensus around team discussions and drawing in lots of different points of view, then your first presumption is likely to be that the problem sits in the complex domain. And if your predilection is towards a command and control environment and an autocracy where one person is clearly in charge and tells everyone else what to do, then you'll probably assume it's in the chaotic environment and you can just find a solution quickly and instruct people to make it happen. However, as you would guess, the correct thing to do is to assess the situation carefully to properly understand the domain within which the problem lies. Only once you've done that can you select an appropriate response style for the situation. Please do give this video a like if you've enjoyed it or learned from it. I'll be making lots more great project management content for you, so please do subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of that content. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.